PowerBoat Television is brought to you by Yamaha, revs your heart. Ford F-Series, smart, tough, capable. And Cruisers Yachts, manufacturing world-class boats.
Of the historic Rideau Canal sits the tiny town of Rideau Ferry. You probably remember it as a pit stop for the Bull family on their live boat adventure last year. Not much more than a bridge, a marina, a restaurant, and a couple of shops. It's a great place to drop in if you find yourself on a leisurely cruise between Ottawa and Kingston. But this week on PowerBoat Television, we're not here for a leisurely cruise. We're here for pure speed and old school adrenaline at the Rideau Ferry Regatta.
At Rideau Ferry, regattas have been going on since 1897. They finished up in the 70s, and then the club kind of went dormant for about 30 years. So we resurrected it a decade or so ago, and we started out with a vintage event. And we talked to an equal enthusiast group in Clayton, New York, and we brought over some vintage race boats. We had 13 boats that year, and we had a blast. So we thought, okay, well, let's carry on. Let's continue this event. And the history came back, the families came back, some trophies came back to us.
Last year, we did Long Beach, California, race in Parker, Arizona, Burley, Idaho, Florida, and all up the East Coast. Back to Rideau Ferry, which is, for me, is one of my favorite places for many, many reasons. The cinnamon buns that we get at the corner store, a lot of history in Rideau Ferry, and there's a lot of history comes here every year with the vintage boats, the flat bottoms.
When the regatta first started in 1887, there were more swimming, rowing, and canoe races on the schedule, but the main attraction was the steam yacht race, won that year by Geraldine. Nowadays, just about every event is gas-powered with vintage flat-bottom, tunnel hull, and Switzer wing boats all competing in their own classes.
From the small, I call them sea fleas, right up to the outboard tunnels. For the inboards, we've got the small, medium, large. Something in the late 60s would be here. A lot of 70s and 80s, because you've got to be 25 years or older to be vintage.
Now, the terms vintage and historic may make you think old and slow, but trust me, these boats are anything but.
And although speed is the name of the game and there are trophies to be won, there's more to these events for the racers who travel around the continent for the chance to get out on the water.
It's more of a passion for these guys. Some of the boats that are here now that are from like the 70s or whatever are probably in better shape now than they were when they were racing, because they've been restored, they've been detuned, they're beefier, and they want these things to last.
And not just the boats. These drivers want their bodies to last as well. That's why each day begins with a thorough safety meeting.
It's quite easy for emotions to overrule the sensibility of a driver. You know, it doesn't matter if it's a fast car, a fast motorcycle, or a fast boat. Everybody's the same. Let's push that hammer down and go as fast as we can. And it's far more important for me to know that they're in control and they're gotten past that point, and I got no problem with them going warp speed, but let's do it safely and let's not impact our co-competitors.
Around lunchtime, the skies opened up and we got soaked, delaying the racing for a bit. Well, not all the racing. It was the perfect time for the cardboard boat races, where local politicians build and skipper their own cardboard craft around a buoy and back without sinking, and some more successfully than others. Those weren't the only rookie racers out on the water this weekend. Mark Lomica was taking advantage of the regatta and a friend's boat hot flash to get out on the course for the first time, getting used to his new ride with a few practice laps to himself.
It was the first time I've ever been in a hydro. I've driven boats before, but they've all been big cruisers, and nothing like this at all. I didn't have the tachometer up very far, but it was still enough to get me hooked in there. I just turned 65 in April. Anybody can get excited about this. You know, I'm sure that there's a lot of youngsters that like to do this stuff, middle age, and you can see by the crowd of drivers that a lot of them are seniors, and so they just keep the sport alive and excited, you know, for everybody else.
Speaking of vintage, look who we found.
A vintage guy.
Mr. Mark Rothermel, great to see you.
Nice to see you.
He's a Canadian champion, a North American champion. He's a Canadian Boating Federation Hall of Famer, a Canadian Motorsport Hall of Famer. You ever think about hosting your own boating show?
Maybe I'll try that one in my next career.
Apparently, Mark has hosted his own boating show. This boating show.
In man's pursuit of speed across water, powerboat builders throughout the world combine theory with experience to bring us faster, safer, and better handling boats.
Just kidding, Mark.
So tell us about your boat here. What are you racing in this weekend?
This is a F1 class outboard tunnel boat. It's capable of about 130 miles an hour when it's running right. Those are outboard engines. They're V6, 2.6 liter. They're incredible to watch. This is a Molinari hull, an Italian-built tunnel boat. These boats fly on top of the water surface. Very minimal drag, especially at 100 plus miles per hour. And you're basically flying them rather than driving. Vintage, the draw is, of course, getting together and keeping the spirit of powerboat racing many years ago alive. Letting people see what it was like, 30 and 40 years ago. And most of these boats here, these are the pioneers of our sport.
For sure.
Later in the show, we go back in time to powerboat racing's heyday in Canada.
Miss Supertest, Gale, Nitrogen, and Nitrogen 2 head toward the starting line. Nearly 7,000 horsepower churning the water.
Yamaha spends considerable time and effort studying how customers use their boats. While analyzing survey and usage data, they noticed a clear trend towards cruising, along with demand for more luxury features on the 19s. So, the 195S was born, the most premium model in Yamaha's 19-foot lineup. Let's take a closer look, starting at the bow. Not only is the cockpit and the bow seating area spacious, but there's plenty of storage under all three seat cushions. Now, something unique to Yamaha are these articulating friction-fit hinges, so you don't need gas struts to hold the seat up. It's not going to fall in the wind and bonk in the head. Gas struts on a hatch this small might get in the way. You've got contoured backrest in the bow to give you a little bit of arch support. Now, there is storage under both consoles, and it is lockable. What's nice is there's just enough room to stash a small cooler so you're not tripping over it in the cockpit. And notice how the port storage door is angled a bit? This effectively widens entry to the bow. On the cockpit floor, the EVA foam actually snaps out, which is a really nice bonus for cleaning. The updated tower is exclusive to the 195S. It's a bit beefier with more stylish crossbars and a flashy billet aluminum nameplate. And with that functional tower, you're going to need a spot for your water toys, and there is an enormous center ski locker. Friction hinges keep the hatch open so it's not going to fall and knock you in the toes. What really sets the 195S apart from the AR is the layout. Instead of wake-oriented stadium seating, the S has a pair of swiveling bucket seats, which allows a passenger to sit facing forward next to the helm. This makes for a great cruising layout. But when it comes time to tow, you can spin the passenger bucket around for spotting. And at the heart of the 195S is the 1.8-liter SVHO supercharged engine. And you might think you'd need two engines to push a 19-foot boat along, but you do not. With this engine, we were imagining well over 45 miles an hour. But you'll also notice a ton of sound insulation to keep that engine noise where it belongs in the engine bay. As you can see, this is the much larger 7-inch Connect screen, as opposed to the small 4.3-inch screens found in the rest of the 19-foot lineup. And in real time, I can tell my speed on GPS, my depth, and my RPM instantaneously. We're getting a depth alarm right now, actually. We're in 4 to 4.5 feet of water running about 20 miles an hour. That's not something I would do with a stern drive or outboard powered boat. One of my favorite features is Cruise Assist. It doesn't really matter what speed you're going, just touch the button to engage it, and you've got instant cruise control. Want to go a little bit faster? Just press the up button. Going too fast, pulling a skier or a tow, they're going slower, just push the minus button. And that same button allows you to engage the no wake mode. So if you're in an area and you want to make sure you're not going too fast, you can engage it for no wake mode. Now, in the new 195S, we we've got the SVHO, the supercharged engine, and that engine is perfectly suited for this boat. Plenty of power to get to the hole, plenty of power to pull steer. Here we go. Woo-hoo-hoo! 49, we're just touching 49 in 5 feet of water. Not bad for a single engine 19-foot sport boat. At the end of the day, this boat is all about fun. And sport boats, especially jet-powered sport boats, are super fun to drive. You get all that thrust and all that angle of attack on the wheel. You can turn this boat in a boat length or two. It doesn't really spin out or cavitate or slide at all. It's just hooked up. But when you want, man, can it turn. Now, unlike an outboard powered or stern drive powered boat, when you do want to turn a sport boat quickly, you got to give it some throttle. If you give it some throttle mid-quarter, it just digs in and starts to carve. Check that out. That is so cool.
The 195S is for a more discerning customer, one who appreciates a little luxury but doesn't want to break the bank entirely. Someone who still wants to drop a tow rope in the water but spends more time cruising and exploring with friends. If that sounds appealing, you really should check out the new 195S.
Today on my boat, we're talking about fuel treatment and condensation. There are plenty of fuel stabilizers on the market, but you also have to worry about condensation, and for a lot of people, that means filling your tank all the way at the end of the year. Well, on a bigger boat, that could cost you around $1,500 or more. So what if there was a way you could deal with condensation without having to fill your tank? And that is where K100 comes in.
K100 is a fuel additive that prevents and reverses phase separation in gas while stabilizing the fuel for up to 2 years. The label says makes water burn, and in marine engines, where condensation is a lot more likely to occur in your gas tank than it is in your car, that could save you a world of trouble.
It's an organic chemical, goes down into your fuel, breaks the bond between the water molecules, encapsulates it with a permanent combustible shell, and allows it to burn clean and safe through your engine. Designed for bunker fuels in the Great Lakes steamships to go down into their fuel tanks to break up the sludge and help it burn through their fuel system.
We mixed K100 and a couple of other fuel treatments with an equal amount of water to see how they'd interact. The first two, which were petroleum-based, formed 2 separate layers with the water on the bottom, which makes sense because oil and water don't mix. The K100, though, mixed in to form a solution and stayed that way all day long. And when we tested it with water-detecting paste, the paste stayed green, showing that the water had been broken down and eliminated from the solution. Even this mixture with no fuel in it could actually burn through your engine.
The K100 comes in a couple of different sizes. For smaller applications, this 8-ounce bottle is perfect. But for a bigger boat, this 32-ounce bottle is a little more cost-effective. Had we filled this one all the way, we'd actually need 4 of these bottles. But we didn't fill it, so we only need 1.
Treat what's left in your tank with K100 and run the engine for a bit to get it into the system. Now you can put your boat away for the winter and the gas will be good to go with no condensation in the spring.
Of course, your boat's not the only thing you're gonna store for months without using. And how great is it when your lawnmower, your snowblower, or your generator starts on the first pull?
Motorcycles, ATVs, and PWCs will all benefit from reduced emissions and the 2-point octane boost that comes from using K100. And so can small outboards. Each of these jars has a metal nail that's been sitting in a 50-50 mixture of water and fuel additives since 2014. All of them are murky with rust and oxidization. All of them except K100, which eliminated the water, preserving the nail in a clear solution.
Now, if your engine has been acting up, there's a pretty good chance that there's water in it. But how do you know for certain? You gotta pour it through a water-separating fuel filter. Not so easy to do if your gas tank doesn't come out of your boat. Fortunately, K100 can solve that problem for you.
If you're serious about fishing, StarCraft has a new boat for you. This is the Delta 188 with the dual console. It also has the new VPS hull. Watch what it can do with a 150.
Overall performance was exceptional with the 150 VMAX SHO. Time to plane was right around 3.5 seconds. Top speed, just a hair under 50 with one person and a full tank of fuel. And this isn't a sneaky, small or skinny boat. Length overall is just under 19 feet with a 96-inch beam. It is both stable and fast. The secret is in the new VPS hull, which stands for Vertex Performance Strake. First off, there's a triangular pad that starts out 15 inches wide at the transom and tapers to a point just shy of the bow. This pad is designed to add lift while directing clean water to the prop, which should reduce ventilation and slip. Notice the 4 extruded lifting strakes and reverse chines along the perimeter? They also help provide lift and grip when turning.
Not only does it come out of the hole like crazy, and when you tilt her down and turn the wheel, she just digs in and turns. No more of that slidey feeling you get from aluminum boats. Somehow, Starcraft managed to keep the bottom one piece, and that means the ride is so solid.
The ride remains smooth, even crossing the camera boat wake.
I cannot believe how soft the ride is. I just can't believe it. This has to be one of the best riding aluminum boats I've been in. The consoles on this boat are also all new, and they're really roomy. I got lots of room for my feet. I'm not a tall guy, but if you were, there'd be no problem getting behind the wheel of this boat. And check out just how high the windshield is on this 188. This will definitely be an awesome boat for spring and fall conditions when it gets a bit chilly. But at its core, this is a fishing boat. Let's get back to the dock and check out some of the features on board.
Since the Delta carries the beam just forward the windshield, we find the raised casting platform is easily large enough for 2 to fish from the bow. There's a single pedestal seat mount and 4 storage compartments, 3 of which are lockable to help keep your valuable gear secure. 12 and 24-volt trolling motor options are available. Raised casting decks are covered in marine carpet, but the cockpit deck is finished in durable marine vinyl for quick and easy cleaning. The new consoles look great with plenty of storage, plus room to mount much larger electronics. Here, you can see how easily a Humminbird Helix 9 fits nicely over the helm storage cubby, which, by the way, is perfect for loose items you want to keep handy, you know, like a cell. A new cutout below the port console is perfect for keeping a large tackle box or cooler handy, yet secure and out of the way at the same time.
And no fishing boat would be complete without a big rod locker. And the Delta is no slouch. It's got room for 12, 6 of which can be 8 feet in length. And of course, it's lockable.
The port side gunnel locker can hold even more rods, up to 9 feet long. Deluxe pedestal seats swivel and fold with mounts on both casting platforms.
It's really nice to have the speakers elevated off the floor. And there's lots of storage on this 17FS, including a few trays that'll hold 4 or 5 Plano boxes on both sides of the console. These new Delta hulls have full-length cockpit drains down both sides. Look at that. No more water, just like that.
The aft casting platform takes full advantage of the 8-foot beam, with a 24-gallon aerated live well in the center and 2 folding jump seats to either side. Notice the 2 mounts in the aft deck? One is for a pedestal chair and the other is for a ski tow.
With an 8-foot beam, the 188 is one stable boat.
These fishing features combined with the innovative new VPS hull make for one interesting new model in 2020 from Starcraft.
We're back in Rideau, Ferry, Ontario for the Rideau Ferry Regatta. 122 years after the event was founded, powerboat racing's history is well represented on the water and on the shore.
One of the most impressive boats on display this weekend won't be in the water, and that's lucky for a lot of these racers out here because the Miss Super Test 3 was pretty well unbeatable back in her day.
Miss Super Test 3 is the only boat in the world that has ever won the World Championship 3 times in a row. And to me, it's quite an iconic piece of Canadian history. Some have said that next to the Blue Nose, it would be the most famous boat in Canada. The boat is about just a shade over 30 feet long at 30 feet 6 inches. The key to the whole boat, or one of the keys, is the power. And it has a Rolls-Royce Griffin engine that's supercharged. And where the normal Griffins put out about 2,300 horsepower, This one has been hopped up to produce 2,900 horsepower. And as Mr. Thompson, the original owner, has said, when I asked him how fast does it go, he said, I don't really know. He said, we never had to go full speed to win.
They're off.
So that in itself is a neat achievement, but it also says that they were able to preserve the engine and not run it to the maximum where it would break. And so it survived very well that way.
In the straightaway, Miss Supertest and Gale are neck and neck.
When Supertest came to defend the Harmsworth, John Diefenbaker, the Prime Minister, was there. The Premier of Ontario, Leslie Frost, was there. Some of the American dignitaries, including the very famous Gar Wood, the man who's won more Harmsworths than anyone, they were all there. They wanted to be there, and the crowds that were showing up were amazing. It was quite a spectacle.
Along the backstretch, the American hydroplanes are hot in pursuit of the leader, Miss Supertest III.
About a month after her third Harmsworth Championship in 1961, Miss Supertest 3 was retired following the death of her driver, Bob Hayward, while racing in Miss Supertest 2. She finished with 4 wins in just 4 races and was the only 3-time Harmsworth winner. After a ticker tape parade, she's been on dry dock ever since. Back on the water in the present day, it's the flat-bottom Can-Am racers who are the top dogs in Rideau Ferry.
This is like driving a car with no brakes and a lot of throttle. There's nothing that beats the rush of driving a Can-Am boat. That's a big block Chevy, 500 cubic inch max, and runs on alcohol, and they go fast. We pull over 100 miles an hour in a couple seconds. You see the drag boats and stuff? We do that lap after lap after lap.
And here you separate the men from the boys. You know, when the conditions start to get a little intense there, it challenges you. As a driver, it challenges your equipment.
For Paul, it's also some personal history that keeps him coming back to Rideau Ferry. His father, Dudley, won here as a youngster more than 80 years ago.
In 1933, my dad was 16 years old, and he beat Douglas Cleland, who was the reigning national champion at the CNE in Toronto. He beat him as a 16-year-old. He's in the book of records here. You know, it's just amazing.
Paul even named one of his boats after the race, the Miss Rideau Ferry, driven by his friend, teammate, and competitor, Peter.
When we're on the course and the green flag drops, it's all bets off. There's no friends. Race, 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 and then we'll all go out to dinner together and have a good time.
My ring gear was broken on my flywheel, so I couldn't really step it up, but his boat was just running spectacularly.
Win or lose, the spirit of vintage powerboat racing is alive and well in Rideau Ferry.